Hello again. Welcome back. I hope you are well. This city is looking actually pretty good. I was thinking maybe we could just ruin it from the inside, but now it's looking pretty cool. I might just see how long I can maintain an Omega industry thing. And then I'm going to put a couple giant mega towers in the middle so that everything can circulate around the towers. See how that works? Maybe clean this up a little bit. I put a little college town here, make people smarter. We'll see what happens. Some interesting buildings are starting to form now. Very interesting. And in this talk, I go through this really interesting image of the ladder of ascent. Maybe I can pull it up for everybody. Um, it's just an image I came across on Twitter, and I just thought this was like really amazing. Let's see. There it is. The ladder of ascent. So I kind of go through some of this stuff. There's a couple better images here. Let me see if I can find the one I was looking at. But yeah, it really struck me some of the symbols that they were using, and so just kind of wanted to share my interpretation of this. Oop, here we go. Look at that. Look at that. It's pretty wild. Uh, so we'll get into that. I talked about a couple of things like this giant mandala wheel that's spinning for our experience and kind of how that works. I went into like Reservoir Dogs and Pulp Fiction and what else? I just hope you're having a wonderful time. Before we get into that, though, I would like to just take this opportunity to invite you into a little quiet space. And we can enter that space with a few deep breaths. So make yourself comfortable. Find a nice, relaxed position wherever you are. And let's take a deep breath in and out. And at your own pace, do that 2 more times. Hmm. And if you would like, just take a couple minutes here. Keep breathing in and out and focus on your breath. You can focus in 2 places. You can focus right in the middle of your chest and then notice the rising and the falling. And if it's helpful, you can even say rising and falling as it happens. But try not to become too attached to the words. Eventually just sink into the rising and the falling. Second place you can put your attention is right beneath the tip of the nose. Just notice these areas. as you come back into this world. I hope you can take with you my blessings. May you be grounded. May you have stability. And may you feel love in every day. I hold each and every one of you in my heart. Unconditional love. Be well. Namaste. How are ya? I hope everything's going well. There was a really interesting symbol I came across on Twitter. It's called the Ladder of Divine Ascent. And I had no idea what the hell this thing was. I had to screenshot it and Google Lens it, and then I came up with some of the origins and the name. But it's some like Orthodox Christian thing. But the symbology that I noticed was a couple things. I mean, the whole idea is that there's this guy climbing up a ladder, being helped by angels, but then there are these demons that are pulling off some of these other people. And the very top of the ladder is Jesus. So, and then the halo, which I think it's interesting how old school halos are represented, because it's a little bit different than just like a circle thing. It looks more like the undercarriage of a mushroom tip. If you flip over a mushroom tip, that's kind of what the old school halos used to look like. So, derive whatever meaning you want from that. But another thing I noticed was this interesting symbol at the bottom, which there's different ladders of ascent pictures, but the one I was looking at kind of looked like a snail shell, or one of those spirals. And that immediately got me thinking about fractals, because fractals, I think, it's probably the foundation of the metaphors I use to understand reality. And that snail spiral image is a very common image that you're going to see throughout the Mandelbrot set, or different fractals. And so when you can think of it kind of like, if you zoom in to a particular coordinate on a fractal, theoretically, just my idea here, but you could picture exactly what this moment looks like in every moment that's ever existed or ever could exist. But when you look at a different coordinate, it could look as confusing as chaos. Like basically every shape that can be made inside of a fractal looks absolutely bizarre. And I think the only reason that we aren't in bizarre land all the time is because we attach meaning to things. Our way of connecting with different symbols and shapes in our lives is what brings about awareness and consciousness and understanding and all this kind of stuff. It's the connection to the shapes. And through that connection, there's a feedback, and that feedback is called meaning. And through that meaning, here we are. So I realized, I was like, okay, so that spiral snail thing near the bottom of the ladder, that must be chaos. Because it looked like the fractal, it looks like something unrecognized, which is like the whole Mandelbrot set. You can't recognize any of it. And so that's chaos. And then I looked a little bit deeper. Maybe I looked at a different painting of it, and I realized it was a dragon. And definitely dragon is symbolizing chaos, for sure. So the idea behind this ladder of ascent, go ahead, I mean, feel free to look it up if you want a visual. But you have, I mean, there's a lot of stuff. I'm just going to touch on a couple of the symbols in here. So you have a guy climbing up a ladder. The ladder is a spiritual path, obviously, because it goes right to Jesus. And the underside of a mushroom, which is complete bliss. It's heaven. And then, obviously, you're going to have helpers on the way. You know, there are people, enlightened individuals, teachers, or upagurus, anything that you can essentially use to point yourself up the ladder. And then you have demons. You know, I guess this would be things that would distract you from that path and eventually cause you to fall into the dragon's mouth of chaos, which also I think is represented interestingly in the Ramayana when Sita, I think it's Sita, jumps into the river, because, you know, it's like you do so much and then, you know, at some point, what are you going to do? Just jump back into the river of chaos. And that is also an absorption into the one, getting absorbed into chaos, because I would say the vast majority of reality is chaos. But there's just, it's like the loss of consciousness at that point, though. Yeah, you became one, but you don't know where you're at. There's no orientation to things. So the trick is to like dip your foot into chaos and then come back out, and that will create an openness so that you don't become so closed down all the time. And hopefully you also become friends with the dragon, so that you don't see it as a foe, but more of like, this is what we're working with here, you know? So kind of use that as chaos as a tool. And there's also an interesting symbol at the bottom where you have like a church and all these like old school priest type dudes. And the old school priest type dudes, I think though that is like what I was talking about in Eyes Wide Shut. Those are the secret holders. Those are the people that know all the shit. It's been written, it's been documented, and they're holding it, waiting for the people or the dude or the whoever, the girl, the he, she's, whoever, to climb up the ladder. But they're not going to start releasing this information until, you know, until the one has been identified. And then they just watch the one climb up the ladder, and they see, oh, we were right. You know, he made it to the top, or we were wrong. He got drugged down by one of these demons. And so you use this image as kind of a, like, reflection, I guess. You can use it to see where you're at in your spiritual journey. And then use each of these symbols not as a literal interpretation, but more as it's like a segment. So think of like a mandala. You'll have these different segments making up the mandala on the outside. And then inside of each of these sections, there's an image or shapes or whatever. But it's all boundaried out. You have all these different things. So it kind of looks like a wheel. And in this wheel, so we'll call each section of the mandala an angel. In a different section, we'll call that a demon. And a different, so each of these sections are angels and demons. And the wheel keeps turning. And so as you're experiencing one section, you're experiencing an angel, but it doesn't look like a flying, white being. It looks more like your grandma, or, a really nice friend, or maybe someone who's passed in your life that you were close to and that you're getting a good feeling from because you're remembering them. Something like that. And then as that wheel turns, it goes back, now it turns into a demon section. And now you're experiencing a demon, which could be a plethora of things. It could be like, your boss, or, someone who just hit you with their car, or, like a crazy homeless person that is acting very aggressively towards you. Or, it could just be like food, or sex, or whatever that looks like. And then the wheel turns, and then it's an angel. And then the wheel turns, and then the wheel turns, and it just keeps turning and turning. And so the idea here is that you're going to be experiencing the same thing, the same type of emotions, the same challenges, but every time you experience it, it's going to look different. It's just going to look different inside, but it's going to be the same idea, the same thing, the same concept that you're going to be dealing with. And nobody likes to be turned into a demon. Like, we have to realize that everybody is in this wheel and experiencing a different segment at different times for different periods of time, for different lengths of time. And sometimes we come across somebody who's just looking at the demon section. And guess what they're looking at? They're looking at you. And they're making you out to be an evil, an enemy, an opposition, an obstacle, something that, they're just, they need to correct or fix or something like that. And no one likes to be put in that position. And we also have to realize that whenever we see ourselves doing that to another person, we're looking at a segment of demons, and then we're projecting that onto a human being, that's our problem. Because there's not a single human being who's a demon, truly. We're just flesh and blood. We're just people. Like, is a cat a demon because, like, it goes and kills more, mice and rodents and birds than, like, most other species? No, cats are not demons. Cats are cats. People are people. No, I'm not saying there aren't any demons. There aren't any, people. I'm not saying people don't do bad things. People do bad things. But when we turn a person into a demon, that's putting somebody in a box. And the point isn't to put demons in boxes. It's to, like, it's to reform the demon. It's to say, like, okay, there's a demon here. whatever it is. Now we're going to work with that. There is no aversion to it. And you're not going to put yourself in some identity where you're holier than thou, because who's to say that you're not the same demon in their section right now? Maybe you're the demon. Should you not be forgiven? Are you always the demon? Are you, will you ever, you're never going to change? That's not true. Remember, the wheel keeps spinning. So, you could stay on that same scenario, look at the same person, and given enough time, they're going to not look like a demon to you anymore. In fact, they may look like an angel. They may look like someone who's actually guiding you up this ladder. So we have to be very careful not to cause more hurt and suffering in this world as we're experiencing this turning of this mandala. Because it's a shapeshifter. It's kind of a trickster. One of the, so there are demons though. There are things that will pull you off this ladder and make you fall into, this deep, dark descent of chaos. And, the Bible talks about that shit. And the Bible does a really good job at shaming people and making people feel guilty and stuff like that too. But what we have to, I think what's important to take from it is just a reflection. How is this being reflected in my life? So like I said before, one of the things could be food. It's interesting how most spiritual followings have fasting as a part of their practice. And so, some of the stuff I've been learning about fasting is very similar. The reason why you do that is very similar to why you would, be abstinent from sex or anyway, we'll just use those two things, eating and sex. What is the, be mindful, it's a mindful exercise. So think about how the feelings, your thoughts, and your actions all tie into each other. When that moment comes up where, you're hungry, pay attention. Because a lot of the times what I'm doing is I'm just, I'm I think food, and then I start into other thoughts, and then I start making food, or I start ordering food or something. And then I just keep thinking and thinking, and then I sit down, I eat it, I'm watching something, listening to something, I'm working, and I'm just eating and eating, and it's all gone. But what got me there? That I don't, at the point where I get done eating, I don't even remember how I started. Where does this start? So when you have the thought oh, I should get some food, just sit with that. Be okay, maybe there's hunger. What is hunger? What is this feeling? It's oh, maybe the stomach's rumbling. It's interesting. And then my the feeling, my body feels it should get up and start getting food. Go to the fridge, open it up, browse around the kitchen. Just kind of, it's how you feel oh, I just want to sit down because I'm exhausted. How your body feels like that. It's oh, I want to get up and start making food. But you don't do that with this exercise. You sit with that. And then you just notice the thoughts that start coming up. And let's say this is an appropriate time to get food. So then notice how you act and why you're acting that way. The reason why you're acting the way you're acting is because of the way your thought process is going right now, in accordance with how your body's feeling or your emotions. And so you just, at any point where you start becoming autopilot, try to come back and just notice, oh, I'm in autopilot of just making food. And then come back to the thoughts and maybe just pause. Take a moment to just sit with that. Your food's not going anywhere. You're not going to go hungry. But use this as a way of learning about yourself. Learning what am I actually aware of, how I'm acting. Because through this practice of just mindfully eating, you start to become aware of your actions, more conscious of your actions. And then you can also, some of the stuff that we can notice are the unhealthy habits of eating. You know, like, am I using eating as a crutch for, not doing something else that I should be doing? Like, if I didn't have this wonderful meal to look forward to at the end of the night, like, if I didn't have that, maybe I could plan something else to look forward to. Like, I find myself after a long day looking forward to just making a wonderful meal for myself. Okay, so let's take that away. Now what can I replace that with? Maybe it could be a nice book, or maybe it could be some exercise, or it could be a conversation with a friend, or anything else that you can actually consciously make yourself do and have control over. And that, I think that's why it ties into sex. When our minds are focused, one pointed on having sex or getting off, is there anything else productive that the mind, your actions could be pointed towards rather than sex? Because sex is great. It's wonderful. It's fun, and it can help with connection, and it could even help with spiritual growth. But I don't know how, you have to just make sure that if that is appropriate, if that's what it is, then you can be pointed towards that. And while you're being pointed towards sex, just be aware of the times you start acting unconsciously. And then once you notice those, come back to the moment, and then you can think, okay, is this action appropriate? Like, why am I doing this? What's my intention here? Do I need this? Is this going to help anybody? For what purpose? And maybe you catch yourself and you're like, okay, there is no purpose here besides getting high, or just some sort of release or satisfaction, something selfish, something physical, animal, that doesn't use a lot of forethought. And then you can say, okay, so let's take a break from that, and let's just sit with it. And then the wheel is going to turn, and those emotions are going to go away. And then eventually, through this fasting, through the abstinence or renunciations and stuff, you start to notice the type of energy that's there, because there's a lot of energy. So now we get into consciously moving that energy towards a goal. You're like, well, my goal is to eat really great food and to have sex with a lot of people. That's all good and fine, but that is just a surface level goal. A surface level goal must be held up by something. And so this mindful practice brings us to underneath that surface so that we can start examining, okay, is the intention for spiritual growth, for whatever, anything good, or is it a demon? Is it something unconscious? Are you being guided by something, pulled by something that you weren't even aware of before? You know, I'm not saying, so the idea here is eating and sex is not bad at all. These are great things as long as they're held up by the correct intentions, you know, by intentions that you're aware of, that you're consciously wanting to fulfill in your life. And that's the whole purpose, is just to become more conscious, look underneath the surface layer, and then if it's not what you thought it looked like, if it's not something you wanted, well, here's this, the practice is the way, the tools that you can use to start shaping your intentions and your level of what's holding up everything that you see and experience. You know? So these are all good things. And again, you know, what's the worst thing that could happen? You know, we just we fall into the dragon's mouth and get eaten by chaos, and we become one with chaos. We become totally disoriented. We don't know what's what. But if you're, you know, that's okay. It's not a bad thing, as long as you're okay with that. You know, as long as you're okay with the absence of meaning, then, you know, then continually be unconscious. And that the dragon of chaos works so, it's not how you think. You know, like that, what it does is it can eat you up and then spit you back out into the world, into order. And then you're left trying to navigate this world of order, disoriented, and then you get thrown back into the dragon's mouth over and over and over, until eventually you reach the top of the ladder. And when you're at the top of the ladder, you're, you know, by going into heaven, you're able to take every step in chaos in a meaningful way. So you're able to integrate both the dragon and order into a manageable state of being. And when you become enlightened in this life, you're able to take every single step in heaven, no matter what it looks like. Because you realize that even if you're looking at something that you don't feel is good, that's going to change, because it's on a wheel. And the wheel is eternally spinning for your experience. And once you understand that, you're able to live on two levels. You're able to live on one level where there are good and bad, but good and bad are both the same thing, because it's all on the same wheel. And all the images that are being used on each of these segments are pretty much they can be the same images. They're always going to be changing. So, like, your loved one can look like a demon, and then the next day look like an angel, and then the next day look like a demon. Some people, they take psychedelics and they come to these realizations but don't have the framework for them because maybe they haven't been studying spiritual things, and they go crazy. They're like, my world is tipped upside down, because they're like, how can someone I love be someone I hate, and be someone I love and someone I hate? And they spin out. It's just from the perspective. If you're taking a perspective where things have to be one or the other, then yeah, this shit is super confusing. But then once you pop out, you see the whole mandala, you see that you're at the center of it, and that all of these things are the same. You're just more relaxed. You're like, okay, yeah, wonderful. So you're a good guy right now. Super. Let's keep you that way. And then you see someone else, you're a bad guy. Oh, wow, that's interesting. You're a bad guy. Well, I know that's not true. So what can I learn from this? And you just keep going around and around and around until eventually it's like, I'm not even looking at good or bad anymore. I'm just looking at a bunch of shit, and I'm going to have a good time. So, that's what it is. And then other people see you, they're like, oh, wow, this guy's having a good time. That's strange. And then they're, start asking questions, and they start learning, and then they start becoming okay with everything, Oh, man. It's really interesting, like, the amount of this truth that comes out. But it typically, like, you see the saints and you see the truth come out at really fucked up times, like really, really hard times. I'm just going to point out 2 times that I can think of right now. And the first one is in Reservoir Dogs at the beginning, where Tim Roth is shot and Harvey Keitel is trying to console him. And Tim Roth is absolutely flipping out because he's like, I'm dying. I can't believe what just happened. He's in the past. He's like, I can't believe she shot me. And he's in the future. I'm going to die. He's in both of these things. And then Harvey Keitel, dude's like, listen, man, he's like, Harvey Keitel is too busy to be concerned with bullshit. And so he's just like driving, holding this dude's hand, and he even tells him his name. Like he's so in the zone that he doesn't even, he drops his guard and like tells him the truth. He tells him his name is Larry. And through that conversation, Harvey Keitel talks Tim Roth down. He's like, dude, you're not a doctor. Are you a doctor? Which is like, this is also a technique that, I think, what's her name? Byron Katie or something like that. Byron Katie. It's some really wise woman that's on YouTube. And one of her things is, if people are going on and on about shit, she just asks like, hey, is that true? Just cuts through all the bullshit. Is that true? Because when you're talking about the future, it's not true yet. It hasn't happened. When you're talking about the past, that shit's way gone. Like, that doesn't exist anymore. You have to deal with what's on your plate right now. Harvey Keitel cuts through it, and Tim Roth is like, I'm okay. I'm okay, Larry. I'm okay. And I'm okay is the truth. I'm okay is that it is the true beingness at all times. No matter what's happening, you're always okay. Always. There's no other option. You can't not be okay. If you're not okay, you're either in the past or in the future, but you're certainly not right now. And then another moment is in Pulp Fiction. And I just realized this recently after rewatching the diner scene. But basically, he's in the diner again with Tim Roth. And, like the whole Ezekiel passage, I don't think that that's a real passage in the Bible. But the point of that passage, he breaks it down. It's like Samuel Jackson he is the man. Like, he is the alpha dog. And all of the other people are just sheep. And so he can slaughter all the sheep that he wants because he's just that alpha dog. But, he's so alpha that he got shot by a giant gun and the bullet went right through him. It didn't hurt him whatsoever. Went right through him. Hit the wall behind him. He should have been dead. And he says that. There's no reason why I shouldn't be alive. And he's talking to John Travolta. He's like, dude, changing my whole life right now because that shit was not logical. My whole life has been built up upon logic, upon rationality, and that should not have happened according to everything that I know. Therefore, there's something I don't know that's going on. And then, and then he's telling John Travolta, like, dude, I'm going to become a wanderer, which is basically like some, one of those Indian, street people that is just like spiritually enlightened, but has no attachments to the world. So just walks the earth, and they do look like bums, according to society, you look like a bum, but according to the individual, you are it all. You have no roles and you have every role. He became, he became enlightened. That's what happened. When when everything that seems correct, that should make sense, and then it doesn't happen that way, that can break your mind and put you right into the enlightened stage. That's like Gyan yoga. I don't know. I'm not like an expert in this stuff. That's what happened to me. All my rational logic shit completely broke down. Boom. Became aware. I understood. I understood it all. And I still do. That's why I'm talking to you right now. So, again, the point of those stories is that these things, these truths will come out in moments of extreme stress and disorder. So just pay attention to those areas in your life because as rough as it may seem, it's really like a huge opportunity. And it's an opportunity not everybody takes. Some people have these events happen to them and like, it's like, in Pulp Fiction, it was with John Travolta. Like John Travolta didn't see anything from that. He didn't have any meaning from that at all. What ended up happening to him? It's same shit over and over. Maybe you're not going to learn it in this life. We'll throw you back into another life. See if you learn it then. See if you can climb the ladder at that point. So, yeah. Anyway, let's sit for a minute.